Let's talk about the ultimate Twitter showdown that spilled over into an imaginary battlefield: Nigeria versus Kenya. This hashtag has been trending for what feels like forever, and honestly, it's giving soap opera vibes. On one side, we've got Kenyans, the undisputed kings and queens of online combat. Kenyans on Twitter is basically an elite cyber army feared across the internet. On the other side, we have Nigeria, the land of swagger, hustle, and zero chill. When Nigerians show up, they don't just clap back, they bring the whole symphony. Now, let's spice it up. Nigeria ranks 4th in African military power, while Kenya holds the 11th spot. Imagine these two hard-headed nations, neither of which ever backs down, deciding to take their Twitter beef offline and settle it the old-school way, on the battlefield. Who's got the edge in this hypothetical clash of titans? We're diving deep into their military might, strategies, experience, and tactics to find out who would reign supreme. Let's get into it. We start with the obvious. When it comes to size, this isn't just David versus Goliath, it's David versus a village of Goliaths. Kenya's 57 million people boast an active military of about 25,000 troops. On the other hand, Nigeria's 230 million citizens bring forward a staggering 230,000 active personnel. That's nearly 5 Nigerians for every single Kenyan soldier. If this battle came down to raw numbers, it's safe to say Kenya could be seriously outnumbered even in the pre-match warm-ups. But before the Nigerian brothers start celebrating early, war is not just about quantity. It's also about quality. Kenyan forces are known for their discipline and training, so much so that their soldiers are called efficient and precise. But Nigeria, well, with that many soldiers, it's safe to assume a few might have sneaked into training sessions, half asleep or distracted by the latest Nollywood drama. Kenya could pull a Kipchoge move. They could wait for Nigeria's power company NEPA to turn off electricity and strategically run literal circles around their overstaffed opponents. However, the sheer thought of manpower is enough to make Kenya feel inferior in this war. But wait, we said Kenyans don't just give up, they don't just accept defeat. This is where their Gen Z youths come in. It's time to talk about Kenya's secret weapon. No, it's not a new tank or fighter jet, it's Gen Z. Yep, the same group that's been organising protests, making TikToks go viral, and somehow managing to roast governments and celebrities online without breaking a sweat. These aren't your delicate darlings. This generation thrives on chaos and, more importantly, turning chaos into change. These are guys that smoke tear gas, bathe in police pepper water, and blaze bullets to storm into their parliament. Talk about balls. Take a look at what went down recently during protests across Kenya. When new taxes and questionable government policies came calling, Kenyan Gen Z answered loud and clear, showing up in the streets with unmatched energy. These young rebels aren't afraid to demand accountability from leaders. And honestly, if they can face off against tear gas armed with placards, smartphones, and sometimes just vibes, imagine what they'd do in a war. Here's the thing about Gen Z. They've got this never back down energy paired with creativity that most of us can only dream of. They've already proven they can organize en masse, rally others for a cause, and keep the world's eyes locked on their fight through social media. Think about it. Kenyan Gen Z could take over the hypothetical war effort from an entirely new front, turning public opinion, exposing disinformation, and maybe even creating the world's first TikTok-powered recruitment drive. Imagine the hashtags, hashtag Clash of Nations, hashtag Kenya Strong, and the inevitable hashtag We Did This Dance Before. But don't mistake all this energy for recklessness. This generation knows what's at stake. They've felt the weight of rising economic pressures and political turmoil. They're battle-hardened in their own way. If war came knocking, they wouldn't just sit around. They'd bring their innovative spirit, resilience, and signature sass to the table. Because if there's one thing Kenyan Gen Z hates, it's being underestimated. Alright folks, it's time to bring out the war gadgets. Kenya has 188 tanks, more than enough to park on every street corner in Nairobi. They also roll in with 4,856 armoured vehicles, which sounds impressive, until you look over at Nigeria. These guys are packing 343 tanks and 6,404 armoured vehicles. Sorry Kenya, but Nigeria here takes the lead. But here's where it gets spicy. Kenya has 158 aircraft compared to Nigeria's 147. Plus, Kenya's air force boasts 17 fighter jets versus Nigeria's 14. That's right, Nigeria might rule the ground, but in the air, Kenya's jets are far more superior. And if there's one thing Kenyans know, it's how to go the distance. These guys win marathons. But it's not like Nigeria is weak in the air. Nigeria storms into the spotlight with a jaw-dropping array of airborne firepower. First in line is the JF-17 Thunder fighter jet, co-created by Pakistan and China, packing high-speed precision and versatility. It's like the apex predator of the skies. Pair that with the Mi-35M Hind attack helicopter, a beast as fierce as its name, capable of obliterating targets with its heavy firepower and dancing through treetops with impeccable agility. And then there's the Wing Loong 2 drone, a quiet killer. It doesn't just strike targets, it observes, analyzes, and touches down with surgical precision. Oh, by the way, Nigeria is part of an exclusive club operating this unmanned combat ace. Only China and the UAE boast the use of these advanced machines. As stated, Kenya isn't silent in the skies either. The workhorse MD-500 Defender keeps an eye on the battlefield, while surveillance tools like the Scan Eagle and RQ-11 Raven drones give Kenya a bird's-eye view of potential threats. Throw in the Z-9 helicopter, designed with reconnaissance in mind, and Kenya's aerial arsenal ensures its troops stay one step ahead. Not flashy, not glamorous, but wildly effective in the right hands. But here's the suspenseful question lingering in the air. Does reconnaissance trump raw firepower? Nigeria owns the skies with brute strength, but Kenya masters the art of seeing everything before it happens. Play it safe or strike fast? The answer might keep opposing generals up at night. Now shift gears to the pounding footsteps of tanks, the crackling energy of anti-tank missiles, and the sheer chaos of ground combat. Nigeria comes in with an armored monster, the VT-4 main battle tank. Picture this tank rolling onto a battlefield, its fear incarnate, armed with a 125mm smoothbore gun, shielded by cutting-edge armor, and guided by sophisticated targeting systems. This is the apex predator for ground warfare. Backed by multiple rocket launcher systems and the relentless Palmaria 155mm self-propelled artillery, Nigeria's ground game is, well, a lot. But put on the brakes. Kenya's no pushover. Tanks like the T-72 and Vickers Mark III may not scream modern-day high-tech, but paired with anti-tank heavyweights like the Carl Gustaf, MILAN, and BGM-71 TOW, they are more than capable of tilting a battle in Kenya's favor. Sometimes it's not about having the biggest tool in the shed, it's about using the right one at exactly the right time. And while Nigeria's ground forces are pushing, Kenya's armoured personnel carriers, from the Panhard M3 to the UR416, are quietly but efficiently delivering troops right into the heart of conflict zones. This is where it gets controversial. Both countries have superior tanks. I think this one is a draw. Nigeria clearly comes out with guns blazing and superior tanks and artillery, but Kenya's strategy leans on intelligence and flexibility. One wrong move from Nigeria, and Kenya's versatile strikes could split their offensive wide open. This isn't just war, it's chess at 60 tons a move. The ocean is where things get oddly poetic. Over in Nigeria, the NNS Aradu Meko 360 frigate sits like a king on its watery throne. This multi-role warship is armed to the teeth with radar systems, anti-ship and anti-air missiles, and a main battle cannon capable of biblical wrath. It's the literal definition of, don't mess with us. Kenya, well, the truth is, the seas aren't Kenya's battlefield of choice. Their strategy lives, breathes, and thrives on land and in the air. Could this give Nigeria the silent edge in maritime power? Perhaps. But territory wins wars, not coasts. What of war experience? Here's where things get even more compelling. Kenya and Nigeria haven't just built their military strength in isolation, they've forged it in the crucible of relentless asymmetric warfare. Facing some of the world's most notorious terrorist groups, these nations know the taste of chaos and the cost of survival. For Kenya, the shadow of al-Shabaab looms heavy. Operating from Somalia, this group has tested Kenya's resolve with brutal attacks, from the Westgate Mall siege to the Garissa University massacre. Each encounter has forced Kenya's military to become masters of counterinsurgency, tracking scattered mobile targets, neutralizing threats within their borders, and doing it all in areas where the enemy knows the terrain far better than they do. Kenya's response hasn't been about brute force. It's about strategic precision, reinforced borders, rapid response teams, and intelligence-driven operations. But don't mistake Kenya's focused approach for weakness. Their troops have been hardened through real, unforgiving conflict. Every lesson learned, from ambushes to terror raids, has been etched into their playbook, shaping a military that knows how to bring calm from chaos. On the flip side, we have Nigeria, where the battle against Boko Haram has become an unyielding war of attrition. Centered in the northeast, this group has terrorized villages, kidnapped schoolgirls, and pushed Nigeria's military to its limits. Boko Haram isn't just a conventional threat, it's adaptive, elusive, and often embedded in civilian populations. Nigeria's forces have had to learn the art of balancing overwhelming firepower with delicate tactical restraint. War costs money, and guess who's got the bigger wallet? Here's the thing, wars aren't just fought on the battlefield, they're fought in bank accounts. Kenya rolls in confident, with $2.2 billion set aside for defense. Respectable, right? But Nigeria slaps $4 billion onto the counter without flinching, like someone with way too much airtime credit. And then there's oil. Nigeria produces a jaw-dropping 1.6 million barrels of oil per day, with reserves stacked at 37 billion barrels. Kenya? No oil. None. Zip. While the Kenyans are hyping themselves up on chai and nyama choma, Nigeria is guzzling fuel, ready to power their tanks, jets, and pretty much a small country while they're at it. What's military strength without strategy? Nigeria's weaponry screams global ambition, state-of-the-art systems built to show Africa and the world that it won't be overshadowed. But Kenya's arsenal speaks in quieter tones. It's not designed to dominate, it's designed to protect, to outwit, and to endure. This brings us to the nail-biting, anxiety-infused finale. Two nations, two vastly different philosophies of defense. One leans on crushing hardware and high-tech upgrades, the other relies on flexibility, strategy, and diverse essentials. If you had to place a bet, where would you put your chips? On the titan with the bigger toys, or the tactician with a measured approach? The truth is that war is unpredictable, relentless, and rarely as simple as the hardware people like to obsess over. Both nations have the pieces to outperform the other, but the outcome depends on one thing alone. Who plays their hand better? The answer will come not from spectacular firepower or clever formations, but when strategy meets chaos on the battlefield, bad things happen. Here's where it becomes painful to watch. Wars tend to drag on, and long wars favor the side with deeper pockets. Kenya could be left sweating if they run out of resources too quickly. Nigeria's financial arsenal could keep its forces supplied for a long time, but Kenya's resilience cannot be downplayed. It's tough to say, but data doesn't lie. Nigeria's massive manpower, superior firepower, and financial artillery would likely overpower Kenya in a prolonged war. But here's the twist. Kenya doesn't need to win with size. They could draw from their track record of discipline, using clever strategies to outmaneuver their opponent. It's a slim chance, but underdog stories are everyone's favorite plotline. Still, here's the thing. This is all imaginary, because in the real world, neither Kenya nor Nigeria should be thinking about war. These two nations have so much more in common than what divides them. Instead of clashing, imagine what they could achieve working together. Think of a world where Kenyans don't just win marathons but also teach Nigerians how to love coffee as much as they love jollof. Where will it hurt you if you subscribe and support us? Hit that button so we get the motivation to bring you more videos.
We are here to sacrifice our today for their tomorrow. We are here to sacrifice today so that our children will have a peaceful life tomorrow.